What if the next person sent out to clean isn't a rebel, a criminal, or someone who has broken the rules, but the man who once helped control the entire silo? And what if the person ordering that cleaning is his own wife? Silo, Season 3, Episode 9, could be the moment everything finally breaks open. The latest clues are pointing toward a shocking announcement from Camille, the possible return of Bernard, major revelations about the mysterious safeguard protocol, and a deeper look at what really happened before the silos were built. But there is one theory that could change everything. Robert Sims may have reached the end of the road. Camille has already shown that she is willing to make impossible choices to protect the silo, and now she may have to choose between her husband and everyone else living underground. If she chooses the silo, Sims could be sent outside in front of everyone. And if that happens, the people of Silo 18 may finally realize that the old order is collapsing. But that is only the beginning, because while the present is falling apart, the past may finally reveal why the silos were created in the first place. So let's break down Silo Season 3, Episode 9, the biggest theories, and what could happen in this penultimate episode. The penultimate episode of Silo Season 3 is now almost here, and after everything that has happened throughout this season, there is a strong feeling that Episode 9 could be one of the biggest episodes yet. The season has slowly been building several different stories at the same time. Juliet is fighting to understand what is really happening inside the silos. Bernard has disappeared from the public eye. The truth about the safeguard protocol is becoming more dangerous. And Robert Sims, who once had enormous power inside Silo 18, now finds himself trapped in a cell with almost no control over what happens next. But the biggest clue may come from Camille. The episode's synopsis suggests that the entire silo will be stunned by an announcement from Camille. That is a very interesting choice of words. The silo has already experienced shocking events. People have seen rebellion, deaths, disappearances, and changes in leadership. So if the entire silo is going to be stunned by something Camille announces, it has to be something much bigger than an ordinary political decision. And this is where Robert Sims comes back into the picture. The image connected to the episode shows Camille and Juliet looking toward a large crowd gathered outside. Juliet appears to be wearing clothing connected to her position as mayor, while Camille is standing in a place where she can see what is happening to the people around her. The crowd makes this feel like some kind of major public event. And when you combine that image with the episode synopsis, one possibility immediately stands out. Someone could be sent out to clean. At first, it might seem strange to assume that Sims is the person being prepared for cleaning. But when you look at where his story has gone this season, the pieces begin to fit together. Sims is not the same man we saw earlier in the story. He has spent much of his life enforcing the rules of the silo. He killed for the system, he protected the leadership. He believed that maintaining order was more important than almost anything else. But now he has started to understand the cost of what he did. The biggest change in Robert has been his relationship with his own actions. He is no longer simply following orders without thinking. He regrets what he has done, and he wants his son Anthony to remember him differently. He wants to be remembered as someone who eventually tried to do the right thing. That makes his current situation even more tragic, because Robert may finally understand the truth. But understanding the truth may not be enough to save him. And Camille may be the person who decides his fate. There have been theories that Camille could secretly be working with Sims against the algorithm. Some viewers have suggested that she may be playing a much larger game than we realize. Perhaps placing Sims and Juliet together was part of some hidden plan. Perhaps Camille has been pretending to follow the system while secretly trying to destroy it from within. But personally, I don't think that is where the story is going. If Camille really were working with Sims, the show would have given us stronger evidence by now. Instead, her relationship with Robert has become increasingly hostile. She does not trust him. He does not trust her. And more importantly, the things they say to each other sound less like two people secretly working together and more like two people who have reached the point where their relationship may be impossible to repair. Robert recently reminded Camille of what happened to Juliet, and his words were especially brutal because he accused her of trying to erase what happened and failing. That is not the kind of conversation you would expect between two people secretly fighting on the same side. It sounds like a marriage that has completely broken down. Then Camille tells him, "You've made your choice." That sentence could be far more important than it first appears. Because Camille may believe that Robert has chosen Ida, and if she believes that he is now a threat to the stability of the silo, she may no longer see him as her husband first. She may see him as a danger that has to be removed. This is where the safeguard protocol becomes extremely important. Camille knows that something is wrong. She knows that there are forces inside the system that can punish an entire silo. She has seen enough evidence to understand that the threat is not imaginary. The discovery of Silo 17 has changed the situation completely. The people controlling the silos have access to information and technology that ordinary citizens do not understand, and the safeguard protocol appears to be one of the most terrifying parts of that system. The algorithm has already made it clear that Camille should not forget what happened in Silo 17. That means Camille is under enormous pressure. She has to protect herself. She has to protect her son Anthony, and she has to protect the people living in Silo 18. If she believes Robert knows something that could put all of them in danger, then her decision may become very simple, even if it is emotionally devastating. She could choose the silo over her husband, and that is why I think the episode's shocking announcement could be connected directly to Sims. Imagine what that would mean for the people of Silo 18. Robert Sims is not some unknown citizen. He was once the judge. He was connected to judicial. He was one of the most powerful people in the silo. For years, people would have looked at him as one of the men who represented the system itself. Now imagine those same people watching him being sent out to clean. That would be an enormous shock. It would also explain why the synopsis describes the entire silo as being stunned by Camille's announcement. Simply announcing that somebody is going to clean would not necessarily create that kind of reaction. But announcing that Robert Sims is going to clean could change the way everyone sees the current leadership. The man who once enforced the rules could suddenly become the person punished by those same rules. And there is something even more interesting about that possibility. Robert's character journey may have been building toward this exact moment. He started as someone who was willing to do terrible things because he believed the silo needed people like him. He became part of a system where violence was accepted as long as it protected order. But over time, he began to regret his actions. He began to understand that the system he served was not as simple as he once believed. Now he wants his son to remember him as someone who fought for people rather than against them. That makes a cleaning especially powerful, because Robert could finally die for the opposite reason from the one he expected. He once killed to protect the silo. Now he could be killed because the people protecting the silo believe he has become a threat. And Camille could be the one forced to make that decision. But I don't think the story would make this moment completely simple. Camille herself is not exactly in control. She is scared, paranoid, and under pressure from forces that are much bigger than her. If she sends Robert out to clean, she may believe that she is saving everyone. But she could also be making the exact choice that the algorithm wants her to make. That is the frightening part. What if Camille believes she is protecting the silo, while the system is actually using her fear against her? The algorithm knows how dangerous Robert could become. It knows what he knows. It knows about the information surrounding Silo 17. And it knows that people inside Silo 18 are starting to question the rules. If Robert remains alive and continues talking, he could become a problem. So removing him would solve several problems at once. But there is also a possibility that Robert's death would have the opposite effect. Instead of creating peace, it could create another rebellion. Juliet has already shown that the people of the silo are capable of questioning everything they have been taught. If they see someone like Sims being sacrificed by the same system he once served, they may begin asking a dangerous question. If the system can turn on Robert Sims, who is safe? And that question could spread quickly. This is why I think Episode 9 may not simply be about whether Robert survives. It could be about what his possible cleaning represents. His fate could become a symbol of the old silo system finally collapsing. For years, people believed that the rules existed to protect them. But what happens when the person enforcing those rules becomes the victim of them? That could be the moment when Silo 18 finally realizes that the real enemy may not be the person standing in front of them. It may be the system controlling everything from behind the walls. And this brings us back to Camille. Her announcement could be the beginning of something much bigger. She may believe she is making one final decision to protect her family and the silo. But by choosing to turn against Robert, she could accidentally push the entire silo closer to the truth. Because Robert is not the only person whose story is about to explode, Bernard is still out there. Juliet is still searching for answers. And somewhere behind all of this is the mysterious system that has the power to control the fate of entire silos. If Robert Sims really is sent out to clean in episode 9, I think it will be one of the clearest signs yet that the old order is dying. And if Camille is the person who orders it, then her announcement could become one of the most shocking moments of the entire season. But there is another question we have to ask. Where is Bernard? Because the last time we saw him, the story seemed to be quietly telling us that his role was not finished yet. And if Bernard decides to reveal himself now, the consequences could be far greater than anything Camille or the algorithm is prepared for. But if Robert Sims is about to become the biggest public shock in Silo 18, Bernard could be the person who creates an even bigger one. The final moments of the previous episode gave us a very important image. Bernard. After everything that has happened, seeing him again was not something that felt random. The show has spent a huge amount of time building Bernard into one of the most important figures in the entire silo system. He understands the rules, he understands the leadership, he knows how the silo operates from the inside, and most importantly, he knows things that almost nobody else knows. That is why I think his return could be perfectly timed. Right now, Silo 18 is in chaos. Juliet has been taken. Shirley knows that something has gone badly wrong. People are beginning to lose faith in the system, and the threat of the safeguard protocol is hanging over everyone. At the same time, Camille is making decisions that could completely change the balance of power. This is exactly the kind of situation where Bernard may finally have to stop hiding. For a long time, Bernard's greatest strength was his ability to stay in control without revealing everything he knew. He understood that information was power. The less people knew, the easier they were to control. But that strategy becomes much harder when the people around you begin discovering the truth for themselves. And now Juliet knows too much. Shirley knows too much. Camille knows too much. Even Sims knows too much. The secret is no longer safe. That creates a very interesting problem for the people behind the system. They can silence one person, they can punish another, they can manipulate someone else. But when several people begin connecting the same pieces, controlling the situation becomes much harder. And that is where Bernard could become extremely dangerous. Because the algorithm does not know that Bernard is still alive. At least, that is what the theory suggests. If the system believes Bernard is gone, then his sudden return would be something it did not properly account for. And when you are dealing with a system that appears to predict human behavior and control entire populations, an unexpected variable could be incredibly important. Bernard could become that variable. Think about what he could reveal. He knows about the leadership structure. He knows about the rules surrounding the silo. He knows more about the history of Silo 18 than almost anyone still alive inside it. And if he has discovered even part of the truth about the safeguard protocol, he may understand exactly how dangerous the situation has become. The biggest question is whether Bernard will reveal himself publicly. I think there is a very good chance that he does. Not because he suddenly wants power again, but because he may realize that hiding is no longer protecting anyone. If Juliet is gone, if the people of Silo 18 are confused, and if the leadership is losing control, Bernard may finally decide that the only way to save the silo is to tell everyone what he knows. And that could create one of the most powerful moments of the season. Imagine the people of Silo 18 believing Bernard is dead, only for him to suddenly appear in front of them. The reaction alone would be enormous. But Bernard wouldn't just be returning. He could be returning with the truth. And that truth may involve the safeguard protocol. This is where things become much darker. The people of Silo 18 have always believed that their biggest danger is the outside world. They have been taught that the surface is deadly. They have been taught that leaving the silo means death. They have been taught to fear everything beyond those walls. But what if the thing they should really fear is not outside? What if the greatest danger has always been inside the system? The safeguard protocol appears to suggest that someone has the ability to destroy an entire silo. That means All of these people have been living inside a structure where their survival may ultimately depend on decisions being made somewhere they cannot see. And if Bernard knows this, then he has a terrible choice to make. Does he tell everyone the truth and risk causing panic? Or does he stay silent and allow the system to continue controlling them? I think episode 9 could force him to choose. There is also another reason why Bernard's return could matter. Juliet and the others have been trying to understand the mysterious pipe and what it means. There was a plan to potentially deal with it, but that plan now seems much harder to complete because the people in charge have become aware of what Juliet was trying to do. That means the obvious solution may no longer be possible. And when the obvious solution disappears, Bernard's knowledge becomes more valuable. He may know another way. Instead of trying to destroy the pipe directly, Bernard could help them reach the people or systems responsible for controlling it. And that could take them directly toward the algorithm. This is why I don't think Bernard's return would simply be about bringing back an old character. It could be about bringing back the one person who understands how the entire system works. For years, Bernard was part of that system. He helped maintain it. He enforced it. He believed in it. Now he may be one of the people most capable of exposing it. That makes his character journey extremely interesting, because Bernard could become the bridge between the old silo and the new one. The old silo was built on secrecy. The new silo is beginning to demand answers. And Bernard could be the person who finally connects the two. But there is an even bigger theory here. What if Bernard's return leads directly to the discovery of why the safeguard protocol exists? We already know that the silos are connected in ways the people living inside them do not fully understand. There are systems running behind the scenes. There are pipes, hidden technology, communication methods, and rules that appear to have existed long before the current people in the silo were born. That raises a terrifying possibility. Maybe the safeguard protocol was never created because the people controlling the silos are evil. Maybe it was created because they are terrified of humanity. That would completely change the meaning of the story. Think about what the people in the silos know about the outside world. Almost nothing. Their historical records were destroyed or controlled. Their understanding of the past is incomplete. They have no clear picture of what happened before the silos were built. And if you remove history from a civilization, you also remove its ability to understand its own mistakes. What if that was intentional? What if the people who created the silos believed that humanity had already destroyed the world once? And what if they were terrified that it could happen again? That would explain why the system is so obsessed with control. It would explain why rebellion is treated as such a serious threat. It would explain why information is restricted. And it could even explain why there is a mechanism capable of destroying an entire silo. Because if the people inside one silo became too dangerous, the system could simply erase them before they became a threat to everyone else. That is a horrifying idea. But it would also make the story much more complicated than simply good people versus bad people. Maybe the people who created the system believed they were saving humanity. Maybe they genuinely believed that humans could not be trusted with complete freedom. And if that is true, then the biggest question becomes whether they were right. Could humanity destroy itself again? Could history repeat itself? And was the silo system created because somebody already knew the answer? This is where I think Bernard could become essential. He may be the person who finally connects the history of humanity to the purpose of the silos. And if he reveals that truth to Silo 18, it could completely change the way everyone sees their lives. Suddenly, the question would not just be, who is controlling us? It would be, why were we created this way? That is a much bigger mystery. And I think the show has been slowly preparing us for it. There is also something important about Juliet's position in all of this. Juliet has always been the person willing to challenge the rules because she believes the truth is worth the risk. Bernard, on the other hand, spent much of his life believing that some truths were too dangerous to reveal. Now those two ideas are coming together. But while everyone inside Silo 18 is fighting to survive the chaos happening in the present, the story may be about to take us back to the moment when all of this began. The trailer appears to give us another look at the world before the silos were fully established, and I think this part of the story could be just as important as everything happening underground. We have spent so much time asking what the silos are, who controls them, and why people are not allowed to leave. But eventually, the show has to answer the most important question of all. Why were the silos created in the first place? And episode 9 could finally start giving us that answer. One of the most interesting details is the image showing Helen connected to the silos before everything fully became the world we know. She appears to be wearing a lanyard with the number 18 around her neck. That number immediately stands out because Silo 18 is where so much of the present-day story is taking place. That means Helen's connection to Silo 18 could be much deeper than we originally thought. She may not simply be someone who happened to become involved with the project. She could be connected to the creation of the silo itself. And if that is true, then her relationship with the people responsible for building the silos becomes extremely important. The other major character in this part of the story is Daniel Keene. Daniel is clearly too valuable to simply disappear. He has the intelligence and knowledge that the people behind the project need. Even though he has expressed doubts about becoming part of something like this, there is still a strong possibility that he will be pulled deeper into the project. And I think that is where the story could become much darker. Because Daniel may believe that he is helping build something designed to protect humanity, but what if he does not fully understand what he is actually helping create? This is one of the biggest questions surrounding the Before Time storyline. We know the people building the silos have a reason for doing it. We know they believe the project is necessary, but we still don't completely understand what happened to the world outside or what caused humanity to reach the point where living underground became necessary. The historical records inside the silos are not enough to give people the complete answer. That means the people living there have essentially inherited a mystery. They were born into the consequences of decisions made hundreds of years earlier. And now the show may finally be giving us a chance to watch those decisions being made. That is incredibly important because it could completely change how we understand the current storyline. For example, there is a disturbing possibility involving Helen. In the most recent events, there was a moment when Helen wanted to leave the project. She did not seem comfortable with what was happening. She questioned the situation and wanted to walk away. But before she left, there was a detail that caught my attention. She drank a large amount of water. That may sound completely ordinary, but in the world of Silo, ordinary things are rarely completely ordinary. We already know that substances can be introduced through the water supply, we know that memory manipulation is possible, and we know that the people running the project have access to technology and methods that the people inside the silos cannot even imagine. So what if Helen's water was not simply water? What if something was put into it? The possibility of vitamin D+ immediately comes to mind. If Helen was given something that affected her memory, then suddenly several things about her later behavior would make much more sense. She could remember being involved with the project without remembering the details. She could attend an event connected to the silos without fully understanding why she was there. And most importantly, she could become part of the system without realizing exactly how much she had already been manipulated. That would be terrifying. Because Helen's greatest strength is her willingness to question things. She has a strong moral compass. She wants to do what she believes is right, even when doing the right thing creates problems for her. The people running the Silo project would know that. They would know she is not someone who can simply be told to stay quiet. And that creates a very simple problem. How do you control someone who refuses to cooperate? You could threaten them, you could imprison them, or you could take away the memories that allow them to understand what they know. And that is why the presence of Dr. Sankovic becomes so interesting. He is connected to the technology behind memory loss. He understands how it works. And when the story shows him watching the helicopter after Helen and Daniel leave, his reaction feels important. It is almost as if he knows something that the audience has not been told yet. That moment could be a clue. Perhaps he knows what is going to happen to Helen. Perhaps he knows that her memory is going to be altered. Or perhaps he knows that the people involved in the Silo project have already decided what will happen to both Helen and Daniel. Whatever the answer is, his presence makes the entire situation feel much more sinister. And if Helen's memory really is changed, that could explain why she later appears willing to participate in the Silo project. Imagine how powerful that would be. A woman who once looked at the project and said she wanted no part of it eventually becomes someone who appears comfortable inside it. But the audience would know the truth. She did not willingly forget. Her memories were taken from her, and that would make the entire silo system feel even more disturbing. Because the people inside Silo 18 believe their lives are based on rules, but the people who created those rules may have been willing to manipulate human memory itself. And once you start controlling someone's memories, you are not just controlling what they know, you are controlling who they are. That could be one of the darkest ideas the show explores. Now, there is another question. What happens to Daniel? Because Daniel is not simply Helen's companion in this story. He could be one of the most important pieces in the entire silo system. He has the kind of intelligence that the people building the silos need. He understands systems, politics, and technology in ways that could help them create something this complex. And that is why I don't believe they would simply let him walk away. Even if Daniel says that he doesn't want to become part of the project, his knowledge makes him too valuable. There may even be a part of Daniel that understands this. He is unhappy with his life. He is dissatisfied with being a congressman. He wants to do something meaningful, and he cares deeply about Helen. If Helen remains involved in the project, Daniel may feel that he cannot simply abandon her. That could be exactly how the people behind the silos get him. They don't necessarily need to force him. They only need to make him believe that staying is the best way to protect the person he cares about. And once Daniel is inside, they have his knowledge. That could be the beginning of something much bigger. Because there is another theory that I still find extremely interesting. Daniel Keene could eventually become connected to the voice of the algorithm. Now, this is obviously a theory, but there are several reasons why it remains worth considering. We know that the algorithm appears to have an extraordinary understanding of the people living inside the silos. It knows their behavior, it understands their fears, it knows how to manipulate situations, and it seems to possess an incredible amount of information. So, where did all of that intelligence come from? What if the system was not created entirely from scratch? What if human consciousness played some role in it? And what if Daniel was one of the people whose mind or knowledge was used to create that system? That could explain why Daniel is so important. Maybe he does not simply help build the physical silos. Maybe he helps build the intelligence that eventually controls them. And if that is true, then Daniel's story is not simply a story about a man being forced into a mysterious government project. It could be the story of the creation of the very system that controls the future. There are several ways this could happen. Perhaps Daniel's body is preserved, perhaps he enters some form of cryogenic sleep, perhaps his consciousness is copied, or perhaps the system uses his knowledge to create something that eventually becomes much more than one human mind. We don't have enough information yet to know exactly which version is correct, but the possibility is fascinating because it would connect the Before Time storyline directly to the present. It would mean that Daniel is not simply part of the past. He could still be influencing the future. And that would make his relationship with Helen even more tragic. Because imagine Helen losing her memories while Daniel's mind is transformed into part of the system controlling the silos. Two people who wanted to do the right thing could end up becoming prisoners of the very project they once questioned. One loses her memories, the other loses his identity. And together, they help create a system that controls generations of people. That would be a devastating twist, but there is another possibility. Maybe Daniel does not willingly become part of the system at all. Maybe he discovers the truth before it is too late. Maybe he realizes that the project is not designed simply to protect humanity. Maybe he learns that there is a far more dangerous plan behind it. And if he tries to stop it, the people in charge could decide that the only way to silence him is to erase his memory or use him in another way. This would also explain why Helen is so important. If Daniel is willing to fight, Helen could become the one person who helps him. But if the people running the project can control Helen's memory, then they can separate the two of them without necessarily killing either one. That would be much more useful, because the creators of the silos need intelligent people. They need people who can build. They need people who can maintain the system. They need people who can believe in the mission. And they need people who will not remember enough to question it. This could be the real foundation of the silo civilization, not simply concrete and steel, not simply technology, but controlled information, controlled memories, controlled history, and controlled human behavior. That would explain why the silos have survived for so long. The system does not only keep people underground, it keeps them from understanding why they are underground. And that is the most powerful form of control. Because if you don't know what was taken from you, you cannot fight to get it back. This is why I think the Before Time storyline could be one of the most important parts of episode 9. We may finally see the moment when ordinary people made extraordinary decisions. We may see how the silos were designed. We may learn what the creators were afraid of. And we may discover that the people who built this world were not necessarily monsters. They may have genuinely believed that they were saving humanity. That would make the story much more complicated. Because if the creators believed that humans were responsible for destroying the old world, then the safeguard protocol starts to make sense. The system may have been designed around one terrifying belief. Humanity cannot be trusted with unlimited freedom. If that was the belief at the heart of the project, then every rule inside the silos suddenly has a different meaning. The punishment for rebellion, the control of information, the destruction of historical records, the fear of the outside, the surveillance, the strict rules, all of it could be connected. And that leads to the biggest question of all. What if the world outside was destroyed because humans did something terrible? What if the silos were not created because the outside world randomly became dangerous? What if humanity itself caused the disaster? If the algorithm eventually tells the people of Silo 18 that their ancestors were responsible for the destruction of the world, it could completely destroy their understanding of themselves. They have spent generations believing they are victims. But what if they were descendants of the people who caused it? That revelation would be incredibly powerful. Because then the silo system would not simply be a prison. It would be an experiment, a second chance, a way to see whether humanity could survive without repeating the mistakes of the past. And if the people inside the silos start rebelling, the creators might believe history is repeating itself. That could be the reason the safeguard exists, not because the system hates them, but because the system is terrified of them. And if Bernard discovers this, then his return becomes even more important. He could finally explain why the rules exist. But explaining the rules does not mean the people will accept them. In fact, it could make them even angrier. Because once you learn that someone built your entire life around a decision you were never allowed to question, you may not care why they made that decision. You may simply want your freedom back. And that is exactly where Juliet's story becomes connected to the before times. Juliet is not just fighting to survive. She is challenging the entire idea that people should be controlled for their own protection. So while episode 9 may take us backward into the history of the silos, the consequences of those revelations could completely change what happens in the present. And if the truth about Daniel, Helen, and the creation of the silos begins to come together at the same time Bernard returns and Robert Sims faces his final decision, then we could be heading toward an explosive final episode. Because the past may finally explain the present. But there is still one question left. If the truth finally comes out, what will the people of Silo 18 do with it? If the truth about the silos finally comes out, the biggest danger may not be the information itself. It may be what people decide to do after hearing it. For generations, the people living inside Silo 18 have been told exactly how to survive. They know where they can go, they know what they can say, they know what happens when someone breaks the rules. Most importantly, they have been taught that the outside world is death. But Juliet has already challenged that belief. And once one person starts questioning the rules, it becomes much harder to convince everyone else that the rules are absolute. That is why the next stage of the story could be extremely dangerous. If Bernard returns and reveals what he knows, the people of Silo 18 may finally understand that their entire existence is connected to something much larger. They may learn that the silos are not independent. They may learn that there are systems capable of controlling them. And they may learn that their lives can potentially be ended without anyone inside the silo being able to stop it. That would change everything, because until now, the people of Silo 18 have believed that their biggest problem is survival. But what happens when they discover that their survival is controlled by someone else? That question could divide the silo. Some people may decide that the rules are necessary. Others may decide that they have been prisoners all along. And Juliet will probably find herself directly in the middle of that conflict. Juliet has never been someone who accepts an answer simply because an authority figure gives it to her. She wants proof. She wants to understand how things work. And most importantly, she wants people to have the freedom to make their own decisions. That makes her extremely dangerous to the system. But it also makes her extremely important. Because if the people of CeeLo 18 are going to survive what is coming, they need someone willing to challenge the rules. The problem is that challenging the rules could also activate the very system they are trying to escape. That is where the safeguard protocol becomes terrifying. Imagine the people finally discovering that Silo 1 has the ability to destroy them. They would immediately want to know why. Why was this created? Who controls it? What activates it? And most importantly, what happens if they refuse to obey? Those questions could lead directly to the heart of the Silo mystery. And I think Bernard may be the person who can help them get there. But there is another possibility that could make everything even worse. What if Bernard reveals himself and the algorithm reacts immediately? The system may not simply sit back and watch. It may recognize Bernard as a threat. And if it does, it could begin manipulating the people around him. This is something we have seen before. The system does not always need to attack directly. Sometimes it only needs to create fear. If people become afraid that Bernard's actions could destroy the silo, they may turn against him themselves. That would be the perfect way to stop him. No soldiers, no weapons, no obvious attack, just fear. And that is exactly what the system has been using for generations. Fear of the outside, fear of rebellion, fear of cleaning, fear of the unknown. The entire silo is built around fear. So if Bernard suddenly tells everyone that the people controlling them can destroy the silo, the system could use that information against him. It could make the people believe that Bernard is the danger. And that would put Juliet in an impossible position. Because she may know that Bernard is telling the truth. But she may also understand that the truth could get everyone killed. This is why I don't think the final episodes will be as simple as exposing the bad guys. The characters may discover that there are no easy choices. Every answer could create another problem. Every truth could have a cost. And every attempt to gain freedom could bring the safeguard protocol closer. That is what makes the Silo story so interesting. The characters are not simply fighting against one enemy. They are fighting against a system that has been designed to make resistance dangerous. And Robert Sims could become one of the biggest examples of this. If Camille really sends him out to clean, his death could become a warning to everyone else. But it could also have the opposite effect. People may start asking why Sims was punished. They may begin questioning what he knew. They may ask why Camille made the decision.